Jon Jones is a big name in the world of fighting, especially for being considered the youngest champion in UFC history. Despite his career filled with awards and victories, his name is also tied to many controversies that few people know about. So, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because we're about to dive into the story of this fighter and his dark past. Jon Jones, one of the greatest names in MMA history, was born on July 19, 1987, in Rochester, New York, United States. From an early age, Jon's life was shaped by a unique combination of challenges, faith, and determination. He grew up in a humble family with strong Christian values, which served as the foundation of his upbringing and morals. His parents, Arthur Jones Jr. and Camille Jones, were hardworking and devoted individuals. Arthur was a pastor, and Camille was a dedicated homemaker, both deeply involved in raising their children. Jon was the third of 4 siblings, and the family lived in Endicott, a small town in New York. This community provided the backdrop for Jon's early years, a quiet place that demanded constant effort to stand out. The Jones family came from modest beginnings but prioritized giving their children a good education. His parents were African American, and cultural and religious roots were a central part of their household. The church was an important gathering and teaching space, and Jon often found himself involved in religious activities from a young age. In school, Jon was a curious and restless boy with a natural charisma. He always enjoyed sports and had a physique that made him stand out among his peers. Interestingly, he was never the strongest or most skilled at first, but he had one trait that set him apart: an impressive competitive mindset. He wanted to be the best at everything he did, even in the simplest activities. This trait began to develop in his childhood when he looked up to his older brothers, Arthur and Chandler, who also had a knack for sports. The discovery of martial arts was almost accidental but profoundly impacted his life. Before that, Jon was deeply dedicated to wrestling, a sport he began practicing in school. He quickly excelled at wrestling due to a combination of natural ability and an almost obsessive work ethic. Jon was the kind of athlete who stayed after practice to perfect a technique or repeat moves he thought might be useful. He carried this wrestling mindset into life, learning early on that hard work is the path to success. In his teenage years, he faced some personal and emotional challenges. A deeply impactful moment was the loss of his younger sister, Carmen, who passed away from brain cancer when he was just 12 years old. This tragedy shook the family, but also brought them closer together. For Jon, Carmen's death became an emotional driving force. He began to see success as a way to honor his sister and also as a means to provide a better life for his parents. Despite his athletic talents, Jon's youth was not without mistakes and missteps. He went through phases of uncertainty and even minor behavioral issues, typical of a young man trying to find his place in the world. Even so, he never lost sight of something greater for his future. Jon dreamed of doing something extraordinary, of being recognized, and of making history. But at that time, he didn't yet know exactly how. Jon's entry into the world of mixed martial arts happened during his college years. He initially enrolled at Iowa Central Community College, where he continued competing in wrestling and won a national championship in the junior division. However, he began to feel that he needed something more. It was during this period that he was introduced to MMA by friends and peers who saw in him an exceptional potential. The idea of combining fighting skills in a sport that required strength, intelligence, and strategy was irresistible to Jon. With the support of his family and the guidance of coaches who believed in his potential, Jon began training in MMA. His rapid evolution was remarkable. He developed a unique and unpredictable style, blending technique, creativity, and boldness that quickly drew attention. From the moment he stepped into the octagon for the first time, it was clear that Jon Jones was not just an ordinary fighter. He was destined for something greater, the beginning of a fighting career. Jon Jones entered MMA like a hurricane, rising quickly to the top and making it clear that he was destined for greatness. It all began when he discovered the sport in college and decided to train seriously. In April 2008, at just 20 years old, he made his professional debut. Despite having little formal preparation, his natural ability, combined with a strong wrestling foundation and an unusual creativity in his strikes, immediately drew attention. In his first fight, Jon needed only 1 minute and 32 seconds to secure a victory, showcasing impressive strength, speed, and instinct. Within 3 months, he accumulated 6 consecutive wins, most by knockout or submission. This overwhelming performance caught the attention of the UFC, which signed him later that same year. For someone so young and early in their career, joining the world's largest MMA organization was a milestone that demonstrated his potential. His UFC debut took place in August 2008 against Andre Gusmão. Jon won by unanimous decision, displaying an unpredictable style with creative moves like spinning elbows and unconventional kicks. Next, against Stephan Bonnar, he left the audience stunned with spectacular takedowns and absolute control, solidifying his reputation as one of the sport's most promising athletes. With each fight, Jon continued to evolve and build a solid path to the top. In March 2011, at just 23 years old, he had the opportunity to fight for the light heavyweight title against Mauricio Shogun Rua, an MMA legend. Jon didn't just win, he completely dominated, knocking out Shogun in the 3rd round and becoming the youngest champion in UFC history. With the belt in hand, Jones began a historic streak of title defenses. He defeated legendary names such as Quinton Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, and Vitor Belfort. Each victory seemed to reaffirm what everyone already knew. Jon Jones wasn't just good, he was a phenomenon. His style combined technique, strength, creativity, and an almost superhuman ability to adapt to any opponent. His fight IQ paired with his impressive physique made him a puzzle that was nearly impossible for opponents to solve. Another aspect that reinforces his status as a phenomenon is his longevity at the top. Even after more than a decade of ups and downs, including suspensions and time away from the sport, Jon always found a way to come back and prove he was above the competition, as he did in 2023 when he won the heavyweight title. The controversies of Jon Jones. Jon Jones's career, though brilliant inside the octagon, is also surrounded by controversies that have repeatedly put his reputation in jeopardy. The problems began to escalate in 2012, when he was arrested for driving under the influence and crashing into a pole in New York, a sign that his personal life might interfere with his promising trajectory. But the most serious incident occurred in 2015, when he was involved in a car accident in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He crashed into another car, injuring a pregnant woman, and fled the scene, only to return briefly to retrieve cash from the vehicle. Police later found marijuana in the abandoned car, leading the UFC to suspend him and strip him of his title, marking the first major downfall of his career. Even after this setback, Jones managed to return to the top, but the problems persisted. In 2016, he was pulled from UFC 200 after testing positive for banned substances, resulting in a 1-year suspension. Jon explained the result by claiming he had consumed a contaminated supplement. In 2017, he returned with a dominant performance against Daniel Cormier, reclaiming the light heavyweight title. However, the redemption was short-lived. After the fight, Jon tested positive again, this time for turinabol, a steroid, which led to another suspension and yet another loss of his title. Aside from doping issues, Jon accumulated other scandals. In 2019, he was accused of harassing a waitress at a strip club, a case that was resolved through a legal settlement. That same year, he was arrested for driving under the influence and possessing a firearm, resulting in a fine and probation. In 2021, shortly after being inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, he was arrested in Las Vegas on charges of domestic violence and vehicle damage. These controversies raised questions about his discipline and focus, but they did not completely overshadow his brilliance in the cage. Jon Jones is still considered one of the greatest fighters in MMA history, though his journey is a portrait of both genius and human flaws. Currently, he remains active in the sport and recently reclaimed the top of the MMA world by defeating French fighter Cyril Gane via submission at UFC 285 in March 2023. At 37 years old, he reaffirmed why he is regarded as a legend of the sport. With an impressive record of 27 wins, just 1 controversial loss, and 1 no contest, Jones remains one of the greatest names in UFC history, further solidifying his legacy in the octagon. But what about you? What do you think about this fighter? Share your opinion and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on upcoming content. And don't forget to leave a like. A big hug, and see you next time.